Ready? Let's get this. Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Helena City Commission Administrative Meeting, September 7, 2022, 4 p.m. This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
City Attorney Doctor.
Here.
Interim City Manager Burton.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Shirley.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here. Okay, commission comments or questions?
Oh, I guess, Mr. Mayor, I know that Commissioner Shirtliff was at the city county meeting yesterday, but welcome to your first official
Thank you.
city administrative meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, welcome too.
Thank you.
And while we're at it, I want to also express my sincere thanks to you, Chief, for the work you guys did up on the hill there with the fire. It was greatly appreciated. We appreciate it. And you kept us informed about what was going on. Everything was great. Thank you. Please pass it along to the firefighters and let them know we appreciate the work they did.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe our intent is to provide the commission an incident summary at the September 12th meeting as part of the manager's report.
Okay.
But I'll pass that along, and it was a multi-agency response. So
Right.
thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, thank you. And Chief, thank you very much. I'd like to extend my thanks as well. I'm on the Red Cross Disaster Action Team for Lewis and Clark County. I got to see firsthand the response that you guys provided. So it was top notch. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the commission? Okay, at this time, we have litigation strategy. Is it going to be explained by you, Doctor, or
Sure.
by you? Okay, you have the
Mayor,
floor.
Commissioners, I would recommend closing the meeting today to the public pursuant to the statute that allows us to do so at section 23203. And it's for the purpose of discussing litigation strategy that if you would not close the meeting, it could have a detrimental impact on the litigation strategy for the city. And so I would recommend closing this to the public right now and opening it back up at a time certain so people know when to come back.
Thank you. Comments from the commission? Public comments? At this time, the meeting is closed to the public.
And Mayor, I think estimated time frame so people will know when to come back. What do you think?
Right.
Thank you. How long do you think
I have maybe 5 minutes to talk through and then however long you anticipate for chatting.
For
through your
questions?
Questions.
should we give it 20 minutes? to
Sure.
Make it a long.
Okay.
Okay.
Within 20 minutes, we'll reopen the meeting to the public.
David and Chris, you got the assignment to stay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and welcome back. There will be a little shift in our agenda right now because I know Mr. Whitaker has an event to attend. Is he online? Do you know?
You talking about the airport?
Mhm.
I was going to present.
Or you going to be presenting?
Yes.
Okay, then disregard. But then we'll leave you for later then. We're not going to put you up
Well,
front.
I thought you wanted Mayor to go up front because you're going to. the
Negative.
airport.
Negative. I thought he was online and I just wanted him to give his
No, I-
presentation and then go.
I met with Jeff and the county.
Okay.
and This is the follow-up.
Okay, so we'll move along. Recommendations from Helena Citizens Council. Who do we have online to present?
Mayor, at this time, I don't see any hands raised. I do see a representative. There she is.
Who is it?
Susan Stebbins.
You have the- Hi, you have the floor.
Okay, hi. Well, first of all, Helena Citizens Council would like to welcome Commissioner Shurtleff. We're looking forward to having you attend one of our meetings. We've had the other commissioners, so it'll be nice to have that time to be able to get to know more about you. And the other thing is, our last meeting that we had Police Chief Petty spoke. He gave us a lot of really good information. We had a lot of questions from the public. And he was very informative about training and other things that they're doing to recruit officers. Helena Citizens Council does have two recommendations. The one that I believe you have been sent, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, was on the child care. Has everyone received that one? Okay. And then the other one we just approved at our last meeting was on the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. We had initially approved that in 2016, but there's been a lot of movement on that front. This Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority has been established and there's lots of new things that are happening. So we would like the commissioners, and I believe Peggy, our administrative assistant, sent you the attachments for that, to review that. And hopefully you can make a recommendation to the county so that they can approve that. Okay, that's all. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Stephens. Any questions from the body, from the commission?
All right, Mr. Mayor, just provide some context. We have not taken up a resolution asking the county to support, but probably 18 months ago, there was the commissioners individually
Approved, kind of.
said
yeah.
that they were in favor when requested. So I don't know, I think that's probably a question for the body if we'd want to approve some sort of resolution stating that, but about 18 months ago, we did individually assert those of us who were in favor of asking the county to support that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Go ahead.
All right, just add very quickly that I met with the Chief Administrative Officer during our meeting last week. He brought me up to speed on where the county is with this discussion. They're still trying to work through the details on how do they get out, if they want to get out, and just the logistics of in full membership votes. And so they're still working at the county level through the logistics that if they join,
Mhm.
how does the authority itself work?
Right,
I don't believe they've had their questions answered to date.
right. And I think that was the problem 18 months ago
Yes.
also,
What's it-
because
Yeah.
they didn't have the questions answered.
I think they're still in that spot.
Right. All right, thank you, Ms. Stephens. Any other comments for Ms. Stephens? Thank you.
Actually, one more question, Ms. Stephens. Ms. Evans, did you pass your
Do you know
recommendation
she's there? I
to
don't-
us?
Yes, we did, Commissioner Dean. And also, I know that Paul Pacini, who is head of this, is trying to trying to get a work session going with the county commissioner so they can address all those issues. But as right now, I don't know if that's moved forward or not, but that is what's happening right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Okay, city managers report.
Mayor, I have nothing to report.
City clerk,
Mayor and Commissioners, you should have received the reappointment information for the ADA Compliance Committee and the Consolidated Planning Board. I'm trying to pull up so many things on my screen. That agenda.
yeah,
Jim Whaley for third term on the ADA Compliance Committee, and the reappointment of Quinlan O'Connor to his second term on the Consolidated Planning Committee. If you have any questions on those materials, we'd be happy to answer.
thank you, Madam Clerk. Comments or questions from the commission?
I have one question.
Please.
Yesterday during the city county meeting, you mentioned that we have another city representative for the planning board. Is that this seat or is that an additional seat?
That's an additional seat.
Okay.
This would be Mr. O'Connor's second.
Do you know when that other seat?
I can
Is that-
certainly get that information for you. I don't have the spreadsheet for me right now.
That's fine.
Public comments. Do we have any public comments on this topic? Madam Clerk,
I do not have.
thank you. We'll move along. Okay, city attorney update.
Mayor, Commissioners, I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Department reports. We finally got to him.
Here, I'm gonna just jump in very quickly. In your packet is an outline of the Helena Airport's approach to recruiting American Airlines for a Dallas-Fort Worth international flight. The CAO from the county and myself met with Mr. Camper, I believe it was last week, and he brought us up to speed on this effort. I think that it speaks for itself. And in terms of the part of the report, it shows those parts of the city that are helping contribute toward that effort. Since that meeting, the county commission has allocated $20,000 toward that effort. I let Mr. Camper know that we're at the end of our budget process, that it may be an eligible request under some community request for ARPA funding. And so I just left it at that, the door is not closed. But the commission could further consider it. And so I think that brings you up to speed on this community effort to get that flight at the airport.
Okay, yes, thank you. And I know at 5 o'clock or 5:15, I will have to leave and Commissioner Dean will be taking over. And we will be meeting with airlines that would have the airlines rendezvous. There are executives from various airlines coming in and we'll be meeting. And I'll be presenting to them why we think Helena is a good city for them to fly through. So that's why I'll be leaving. So. All right, moving along. After that, we have community facilities. Director Sampson or Superintendent Sampson, sorry.
One moment, Mayor, while I
We can come back. Oh, man, it's the city.
Sorry about that. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Troy Sampson, City Community Facility Superintendent. We'll be going over the CCIP overview for facilities. The Community Facilities Department provides maintenance, repairs, and replacement on existing buildings and equipment and is responsible for all above ground construction of new facilities or remodels. This includes the roofs, foundations, walls, ceilings, windows and doors, garage doors, elevators, lighting, electrical components, mechanical components, security systems, parking lots, and sidewalks, along with many other items, even for the Civic Center, be theatrical equipment, kitchen equipment. You can imagine how long our list of assets and their components becomes. So how do we manage that? In the facilities department,
Troy, they do have hard copies in their packets.
Right.
all right, I got you. Okay. All right, now we're on the right page. Thank you. In the community facilities department, we plan for the CCIP through internal and external assessments of facilities and equipment, review of past maintenance and repairs, and review of the needs of the departments in each facility. Then we prioritize the replacement and improvement needs and consider available staff, vendors, and funding. This past year, the facilities department contracted with Brightly, formerly Dude Solutions, to implement a facility maintenance management software that identifies all of our assets and provides the tools for work orders, preventive maintenance, and more. We also contracted with Brightly to do a condition assessment of all our facilities and equipment. What does assessment entail? Well, based upon internal and external site observations, research and judgment, along with referencing expected useful life tables from various industry sources, we opine as to when a system or component will most probably necessitate replacement. Historical replacement records, exposure to the elements, initial quality and installation, extent of use, and the quality and amount of preventative maintenance exercised are factors that impact the effective age of a system or a component. Projections of remaining useful life are primarily based on age and condition with resumption of continued use and maintenance of the property, similar to the observed and reported past use and maintenance practices in conjunction with our professional judgment of staff and consultants. One of the major goals of the external facility condition assessment was to calculate each building's facility condition index, or FCI, which provides a theoretical objective indication of a building's overall condition. FCI is defined as the ratio of the cost of the current needs divided by the current replacement value of the facility. The deficiencies and life cycle needs identified in the external assessment provide a basis for a portfolio-wide capital improvement funding strategy. In addition to the current FCI, extended FCIs were developed to provide us additional intelligence needed to plan and budget for the keep-up costs for our facilities. As such, 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year FCI were calculated. Preventative maintenance and repairs for the last few decades has been tracked on spreadsheet logs, leading to difficulties in understanding how much maintenance and repair effort has been put into an asset. With our new software, we'll be able to use this component more effectively to determine the need to replace an asset or component with triggers, reminders, and automated preventative maintenance work orders. The facilities department is an internal service. Our clients are the people that use the facilities we maintain, and their needs come in all shapes and sizes. Our staff meets with our clients each year to discuss their needs. We use these meetings along with requests we've gotten from them throughout the year as we determine capital improvements. Several things factor into what prioritizes one item over another. To understand how we prioritize, a few basic terms need to be defined. So life cycle and renewals, also known as replacement reserves, are recurring probable renewals or expenditures, which are not classified as operation or maintenance expenses. These are predictable, planned, and can often be flexible if not an immediate need. Immediate needs are items that require immediate action as a result of a couple items. One is material existing or potential unsafe conditions. Two, a failed or imminent failure of a mission critical building system or component. Or three, conditions that, if not addressed, have the potential to result in or contribute to critical element or system failure within 1 year, or most probably result in a significant escalation of its remedial cost. These can also include regulatory items that are needed within a time frame, such as ADA improvements. A fairly common scenario encountered during the assessment process and frequent source of debate occurs when classifying and describing very old systems or components that are still functioning adequately and do not appear nor were reported to be in any way deficient. These items are identified as exceedingly aged. This designation is reserved for mechanical or electrical systems or components that have aged well beyond their industry standard life cycles. Typically, at least 15 years beyond and are twice their estimated useful life. In tandem with this designation, these items are assigned a remaining useful life, or RUL, not less than 2 years, but not greater than 1/3 of their standard estimated useful life. As such, recommended replacement time for these components will reside outside the typical window, but will not be pushed irresponsibly too far into the future. Once we have prioritized our capital improvements, we must find a way to complete them. This requires resources. Over the years, the facilities department built cash reserves for each facility, which derive from remaining funds paid by the departments into the facilities fund from utilities, repairs and maintenance, and contracted services. This reserve has funded capital improvement projects over the years, but has been depleting as our internal charges are no longer covering our expenses, and more replacements are on the horizon. We must find alternate funding sources to keep our facilities and equipment in good operational condition. Many of our capital improvement projects require a great deal of organization, and we weigh the number of projects we can do in a given year with our small staff. Many improvements require a project manager, architects, engineers, and coordination with contractors. We also have a look at the market trends on materials and availability. So what's on the horizon? Do our current facilities meet our needs, and will they continue to meet our needs? We can meet immediate needs, but can we afford to do the replacements needed in each facility over the next 3, 5, and 10 years? If you look back to the facility condition index from earlier, you'll see a lot of large numbers listed. And what this report gives us is information to consider. For example, the city shop has a current replacement value of $2.24 million. The external assessment says that currently we have 5% of that cost for immediate needs, which is around $112,800. However, that increases to 97.8% of the replacement cost in 10 years, which is $2.19 million. The facilities department's greatest task that lies ahead for this year is to dissect all of the information provided to us through this assessment and develop plans for future needs and realistic costs and timelines. We no longer can plan our future replacements on our department's reserves, as the predictions far outweigh them. What you see on this slide is an assessment of the immediate needs, some of which we have addressed in the FY23 budget and others that we plan to address in the FY24. Some of these costs include studies of noted issues. Let's look at an example of City Shop. It was built in 1979. It is 20,000 square feet. It has 2 levels and sits on 12 acres. Its all overall condition is fair. When we take a look at the projected cost for capital improvements and maintenance, we have to ask if the facility is meeting our needs now and will it in the future. With the total capital improvement projected cost of 2.7 million on a facility with a current replacement value of 2.4 million, what is the best option? These are the questions that facility staff will work on this year to answer. We'll be diving into each facility and preparing a plan to present to you. In the meantime, we continue to work through our current CCIP. Several of the key findings revealed in the external assessment are items we had completed by the time we received the report or have budgeted for in FY23. Some projects and major replacements you can expect to see over the next 5 years include new roofs at Civic Center, City Shop, Grand Street Theater, and the Law and Justice Center. New boilers at the Law and Justice Center, City Shop, the main fire station, and Grand Street Theater, as well as new air handlers at the main fire station and Law and Justice Center, air conditioning at the Civic Center, Parks Maintenance Building, Transfer Station, and Missouri River Treatment Plant, and more. A locker room remodel at Eastside Fire, a new fire alarm at the City Shop, several parking lot replacements and mill and overlays, more LED lighting upgrades, exterior wall repointing and replacements are just a few of the projects you can look forward to seeing in the next few years. I'm sure you're glad that's the end of my presentation.
Riveting. Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions from the commissioners? I do have one for you. How much of, so, and this might include actually Director Danielson, we're doing this analysis of, you know, our rates and assessments for all of our rates and assessments. Are we including an analysis of, you know, some of these facility costs within that analysis? I'm thinking like the shop, for example, and the, you know, any of the water treatment plants. Does that get included in those analyses?
So, Commissioner Dean, I have meetings to set up meetings with the facilities department to start looking at their maintenance and operating cost recovery. And also we'll be looking to coordinate with the county on the actual rental rates for both this building and the Law and Justice Center, and to incorporate a capital component to those fees as we look to the long-term needs of all of the facilities. We'll be working also with Public Works to discuss, you know, their rate structure and how that incorporates the capital needs of the water treatment plant, the wastewater facility. So the rates from the ratepayers would support those facilities, whereas like the Civic Center and this building and fire stations and whatnot, kind of separate analysis that will be doing.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner, I would also add that years ago, we were putting a small portion of capital into each and every building to where you can never really get a project done in one building. And I think somewhere around 1.2 million was in that fund. And so we started funding some major projects this year. Also, the commission is considering recreating the building board so that the county and the city meet on these issues on a regular basis.
Okay, is there any public comment on the community facilities CCIP?
Commissioners, I have no public comment.
Okay, next up on the agenda is the fire department CIP presentation, Chief Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners.
Never grasped.
Is it?
I haven't been dispatched to a fire yet.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, you might get off the hook.
It'll be brief. We can probably knock it out.
Take your time, guys. Take your time.
We're gonna have to do it this way. Sorry, Chief.
That is not a problem. Thank you. We'll jump right into this again. Thank you. Just a quick review of some of the completed projects from previous years. In FY20, Station 1 received some new windows. Exhaust ventilation system was installed that captures the fire apparatus exhaust so it doesn't contaminate the living environment within the station. 19 handheld radios were purchased. Those are wildly expensive. They're not the walkie-talkies we all played with as kids. For those to be compliant with the federal regulation and digital communication, they're actually amazingly capable machines. FY21, utilizing CARES Act money, we updated and purchased a number of cardiac monitor defibrillators. Ladder truck was purchased that year and has been under build since. We have staff in Wisconsin doing final inspection on that apparatus now. We're anticipating that we'll receive it hopefully by the end of this month, but I would expect it will take a little bit of time to do some training and upfitting for it to be response ready. Station roof repair as well in that year. And within the last budget year, we completed a wildland equipment capital project. It allowed our wildland apparatus to be in alignment with state and federal resource guidelines so that they're ready to be deployed to incidents of major magnitude. So their check-in, check-out process would be streamlined and they would meet those requirements so that we could begin the process of perhaps utilizing those deployments to generate fire dedicated revenue. As well as some thermal imaging cameras were purchased in that year. So how do we fund our capital projects in the fire department? Primarily through the fire safety mill levy. This mill levy funds 6 FTEs. We utilize the 6 newest FTEs for that calculation. So the rest of what we collect in revenues goes towards our capital improvement plan, and we carry over a capital budget for that purpose. Long range planning for the fire department requires us to look at our recurrent and long range costs. Self-contained breathing apparatus bottles are a really good example.
We know they have to be hydrostatically tested on a regular interval, and they can only be tested so many times. So in 15 to 20 years, we know we'll have to replace all those cylinders, and that's a major advantage that Helena Fire has as compared to certain other departments that capital balance doesn't continue to roll through and make itself available to us. Beginning fiscal year budget this year, we estimate about $576,010. At the end of this fiscal year, based on our carry forward projects and our other projects within this year, we'll have spent down some of that balance to an estimated $527,701. Those carry forward projects and some of the current projects within this fiscal year. Danae, next one, please. Thank you. Command 3 and Battalion 1, these are carry forward projects that have also been stalled out and fluctuated due to market issues around vehicle purchasing with supply chain problems and other COVID-related messes that have been made. Additional projects this year, we have to outfit and complete the complement of equipment on our ladder truck that's been purchased. With the addition of the fire inspector last year, we were out of administrative office space at our headquarters station. So we're doing an office expansion project there. We would like to get on a better regular interval of purchasing radios so that we're not reliant on a mass purchase to maintain and be upkeeping that functionality. Our budget transfer out of the capital fund to balance the overall budget came out of our capital funds for this year. And then we've thrown in the budget, which we reviewed with you a while back, is some of the grants that we're applying for that are accounted for in our budget, but are still dependent on a successful award of that grant. Those include Wildland Type 3 engine for assistance to firefighters grant, as well as SCBA or self-contained breathing apparatus fill stations and a fire prevention grant. And then potentially in ARPA, our sole applicant or our sole application item for ARPA is the replacement of a Wildland Type 5 engine. Our future projects include that Type 5 engine, whether that is sourced through ARPA or not, it will still be a department need. So to fulfill these other grant projects, as mentioned, SCBA cylinders, as I touched on, the Station 2 remodel, which facilities address. And then additionally, our engine 3 is reaching some advanced age. Although it's reserved now, there are schedule replacements that are recommended through the National Fire Protection Association. Trench rescue capabilities, we currently do not have that capability within our department's response model that we would like to see made available. And then an overall vehicle replacement schedule policy that's in alignment with the city's priorities and utilization of our capital funds. To address these future needs, we'll be working with our planning committee. Again, that planning committee was created by the commission at a previous meeting, and we're working to provide a synopsis or an abbreviated list of recommendations out of the master plan. So the planning committee is formed by the commission to analyze and develop recommendations that will inform the prioritization of the fire department needs for many years to come. We have fire department staff, our local union, city manager, finance director, HCC and rural fire council representation there. Reviewing current operations, CIP, staffing, the potential for how all of this will influence the Station 3 discussion, as well as the training facility. And then what our funding and financial opportunities are and how to generate fire dedicated revenue as we're a general fund department, and that can be a draw on city's capabilities and resources. So again, that master plan in and of itself had 47 specific recommendations that don't include the ones that address dispatch and SSD. So that's a lot to digest, and that committee is looking forward to continuing that work to provide commission additional clarity on recommendations. I believe that's it.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Logan.
Thank you. On your current projects, you talked about a budget transfer. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Commissioner Logan. I might ask the city manager to interject if I'm off track, but the overall balancing of the budget across the city required, I believe, all departments to make some adjustments and cuts to make sure that we presented a balanced budget to the commission. For us to maintain our materials and operating budget, the magnitude of that cut would have been very restrictive, and it was permissible to use a balanced transfer out of our capital fund so that we continued the ability to manage our M&O budget for the year.
That's accurate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Commissioner Shertliff?
thank you. I had a question about the trench rescue capabilities, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that a little bit? I'm curious about that.
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Shertliff. Trench rescue is one of the capabilities that is included in the technical rescue realm of fire service protection for a community. Some of the others are high angle rope rescue, which we utilize on particularly Mount Helena rock faces with stranded climbers and recreationalists and other folks having issues up there. Confined space is another important one. Every city has confined spaces, whether it be for water, sewer treatment, or utility deliveries of any kind. And to maintain our OSHA compliance for entry for work into those areas, we have to have the capability to provide a rescue to those areas. And the fire department's the logical place for that rescue capacity to exist. Building in off of those technical capabilities, we have trench rescue, and that's where they're digging trenches, and particularly with the soil types, the potential for those trenches to collapse and entrap a worker. There's a very specific series of trainings and tools and capabilities to address that risk. And as we know, the potential growth within the city and expanding city limits will increase the profile of that risk, and we would like to be proactive and aggressive.
Any other questions? Is there any public comment regarding the fire department CIP?
Commissioners, I have no public comment.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move along to the police department CIP presentation. Chief Petty.
Yes, might be the only department without a PowerPoint, so thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and commissioners that are left.
You left us nice memos.
Yeah, a lot of outline. Thank you, Farah. With the CIP for the police department, talk a little bit of historical, I'll only go back 5 years. I won't cover too much of current requests because we've hit that, except for Commissioner Shertliff at our budget meetings, and then talk like Chief Campbell did, future, where we're going. Historical vehicles and equipment, that's what it comes down to for the police department when we look at the CIP plan. Patrol vehicles are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do not, you'll see that the county, each county person for the sheriff's office has their own patrol vehicle. Here in the city, we rotate, we share. Someone comes off shift, goes to the next person. So that vehicle's in service for the majority of the day. Now we have a few reserves with the SROs being specialty. They have their own vehicles and a few others like our DUI grant and our MATIC position has their own vehicle. So I put 5 years life expectancy. That's usually the case, 4 to 5 years, 90 to 100,000 miles is what those accrue. I'd like to give you more stats on the hybrids. I know we're about, this is the third year into hybrids that we're looking at ordering. I know we're saving money on Yes, with those, we're going to continue to order those. Like I talked yesterday to the Joint Commission about time and place and when we order stuff. When I submitted this budget, or when we submitted this budget back when and presented it, prices have gone up significantly on everything. So the patrol vehicles have jumped up about 8,000. So we'll still be able to order under the confines of what we've been approved for, or hopefully approved for September 12th. Moving on historically with what we bought is more vehicles, our administrative vehicles, office vehicles / detective / animal control vehicles. Those life expectancies, those don't get driven hard. Those are an 8 to 5 vehicle for the most part. Those replacements, we can 5 to 10 years out. We know what we're going to be able to buy for those. Chief Campbell mentioned police radios. He's absolutely right. For cost, the ones that we first, when we went over, I think it was 2004, when we went to the digital system and we had the XTS 5000. Those are Motorola handheld radios. Well, if you look at the model number, that's roughly the cost of them. So if it's an XTS 5000, it's roughly 5,000 with a little extra usually added. Well, the new ones right now are the APX 8000. That's roughly the cost of a radio. So each person that has a radio on their hip, that's the cost. We've looked at other radios. We've looked at other companies. And I don't know if Chief Campbell would agree with me, but Motorola beats them all out for capabilities and just the use and the wear and tear. I will tell you that the XTS is some of the original ones we bought in 2004, and those early 2000 years are still in use today, whether they should be or not, but they're still working. They're still, I have one and it works just fine. So, we're consistently looking at doing the radios. We just started that in 17 to where we were able to get about 6 or 7 radios a year. Fire department was on board back then, and we were doing the same things. I think they were able to get all their radios. We're still working on that. Next on my list is current where we're at. I will not, like I said, we talked about in the budget and what I've already submitted for the year. Where the police department is going for equipment and vehicles. Again, every year we're going to see patrol vehicles. That's the nature of the beast. That's where we're at. Radios. Each person needs a handheld radio on their side. Commissioner Logan may like this, may not. Way back when we had radios, and I talk historical here, when I got on 03, you would check onto shift and you would go in and hopefully you got there early enough so you could check out a radio. Not everyone was issued a radio. So you could be out on a call and the senior officer beat you to a briefing. You'd be out on a call and wouldn't have a radio. So you'd go back to your car to have to run, or heaven forbid you start running after someone, you just have to yell real loud. So we've come a long ways is what I'm saying. We're doing very good.
I would say so.
But yeah, whistles. They are a lot cheaper than radios. So future patrol vehicles, radios, we are looking at, like I talked about with our sidearms, the Glocks that are at end of life. Patrol rifles will be same thing coming up. I provided the years that those were bought. There might be a kit or modification that the firearms guys are talking about that we actually might be able to update all those for a lot less price than buying all new. So we will definitely look at that because we want to spend responsibly. Canines, we added one with copper. You guys were able to meet copper. We would like to get a couple more. When we retired Filu, that was our explosive detection canine. He is sorely missed. With being the capital city here, it's all the state buildings. We get a lot of requests for those searches, and we would like to get that. Canines with all the training, they go around 13 to 15,000. We are looking at grants. A lot of times they are grants are provided for that. Moving on, another expense of doing business is the technology that's ever changing. Every body camera video and every dash cam video that we have is stored. They're stored on servers. With a company we use is WatchGuard, which ended up getting bought by Motorola. Those servers run about $25,000 a piece. We usually share the cost with the county. We have 2 servers that store all of that right now. The life expectancy of a server is about 5 years. So we need to be planning on that down the road, which we'll see in the upcoming years. The last one we just purchased was, I believe, last year, to which was a little over 50,000, to which we split with the county because we run off the same system. I threw in a future budgetary item, just it's non-CIP that we'll be looking at a FTE for next year, a non-sworn. I think the courts have brought it up. They want a bailiff / court security person, and per Montana statute, the chief of police has to provide that if requested upon. Now we can provide a sworn police officer or a reserve officer. I'm probably going to go down the route of a non-sworn and make them into a reserve officer for that. But I just one of those things to have on the back burner that will be coming up as a request for a new FTE, because it's going to be, I guess the court was gracious enough because right now we're struggling with staffing on the street. So they have not pushed the issue. And so we're looking at FY24 for that. And then I have ARPA on here, but I feel like we have talked a lot about ARPA and the CAT RMS request, along with the applications that were due today. So all that is submitted. And that is all I have for you.
Great, thank you, Chief. Any questions? Okay. Yes, Commissioner Logan.
Completely unrelated, sort of. About the Harleys.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that too, Mayor Pro Tem.
What about the Harleys?
What about the Harleys? Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Logan, and Manager Burton. So I was part of the motorcycle traffic enforcement and really enjoyed it. I think down the road, and no, I did not put it in my future discussion, but I would like to look at that. But I would not like to look at Harleys, because those are 800 pounds with all the gear on it. And yes, I've tipped that over several times while working, and it's embarrassing. But I would look at Hondas, which are more efficient and a lot lighter. But I think they would be a big bonus. And my brother, who's on the police force, is a huge traffic enforcement guy. So that has been in my ear as well. For let's look at motorcycles again. So,
But that
yes,
program is turned on hold.
we don't have motorcycles at all. So we sold those off. I want to say 5-6 years ago. The program, what we run into is you can only run motorcycles 4 months out of the year. Big agencies down south can run them all year. We'd like to run them more, maybe with the weather patterns that have changed, we could run them longer. And then it came down to staffing. If we didn't have enough on the street, that motor officer would go into shift rotation. So that's another thing that we look at is if we did that, we want a dedicated traffic enforcement team. So those motor folks that's what they do, and that's their job for the summer at least.
Yes.
So,
Manager.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, I think this concludes our review of the department CCIPs. And really, the exercise is to provide obviously you with information, but also to recognize that these departments put an awful lot of work into these capital improvement plans to where they know what we own, what condition it's in, it's tied to a plan. And then every year we come before the governing body where you make the hard choice as to how to allocate limited public resources between and among all of these needs. So part of this to set up your process, the background for your process on ARPA, but it's also to set up the background for next year's budget process so that we can continue to build on it year after year. And you are in a position when you make it a decision that you have the best information available. So I know that it's been a long review, but I think this concludes our overview tonight. And
I do have one quick question for Chief Kenny. I happened to see one of the crisis response team members responding with an officer this week to a residence. And I I mean, I guess I should have put this together, but they had their own vehicle with crisis response team. Does the hospital pay for that, or how does that work?
Yep, that's funded by St. Peter's.
Okay.
I can't remember if that's grant or what it is, but yep, that's all out of their house, and they're on our radio system. They get dispatched. Normally, how that would work is an officer would get dispatched first for scene safety, security, stuff like that, and then mobile response would come in. And it has been nice to have them on scene if they are available, or meeting the officer at the hospital.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, any public comment before we move on to the next agenda item on the police department CIP?
Which time I have no comment.
And I should note Commissioner Reed has transitioned to participating online. Okay, next agenda item, we have the let's see, consider passage of a resolution authorizing the approval of the program guidelines and application process documents to guide disbursement of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I think is Director Brink going to start us off?
Thank you, Pro Tem Dean and Commissioners. How exciting it is to finally be bringing you draft documents for Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And how exciting it is to be so close to being able to solicit applications and actually awarding funds. November 2020, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was established. That fund currently has almost $2 million sitting there waiting to allocate to great projects. After that fund was established, staff worked with the Housing Task Force to solicit input and what a program would look like. February of this year, you created the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Advisory Board. That board has worked solely on creating these draft documents and guidelines and application materials. Dedicated staff has worked diligently to put all that together. I hope that you share as much pride as I do in the work that these two boards and staff have dedicated for the past almost 2 years now. So if you will allow me to stop talking, I will turn this over to Kara Snyder. She's your housing coordinator, and she will present these documents to you for consideration here at the next regular meeting, which I believe will be the 26th, if I'm not mistaken. So. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. So yeah, the following slides just give kind of a broad summary of the program guidelines and the application documents that were in your packets. And then I'll go over kind of just the application process in general. And so as you probably all know, housing continues to be one of the most important and probably difficult issues that Helena faces, and then also our state, our nation. To the extent that our governor recently instituted a housing task force to try to take on some of these issues and provide some solutions that can be instituted on a local level, and then also take into the next legislative session. And one of the themes in those conversations continues to be just a lack of funding mechanisms. And so I think positioned as we are kind of on the front end of opening this fund, I think we're in a really good position and where a lot of cities and towns are probably wanting to be right now. So let's see if I'm sharing it. So just a little bit of history broadly before we get into some of the details. In 2018, housing stakeholders from Lewis and Clark County, Broadwater, and Jefferson counties all came together to put together a housing needs assessment. And one of the biggest, most probably obvious things that came out of that was that there's a low availability and high cost of housing across all three counties, but specifically in Lewis and Clark County, and very specifically in Helena, that's the case. So again, that's 3 years ago. But out of that group, the Housing Task Force was established or reestablished. And I think Chris mentioned that just a minute ago, but they really worked to come up with Helena's own housing strategy. And one of the goals identified in that strategy is coming up with more funding mechanisms that can help help organizations in town that are trying to build or support affordable housing. So Chris also mentioned Resolution 20630, and that established this fund in November of 2020. And then I just want to give a little bit of a shout out. We consulted with Andrew Shanania, who just has a wealth of experience in housing and specifically in putting together some of these really complex housing development proposals. And so he's the one who put together our draft documents of the application and of the program guidelines. And he's just been incredibly helpful. And I think he might be virtually on this call later if there's any questions that would be appropriate to direct to him. And then we also have John Roush in the room, who's representing our housing, I always want to call it the Housing Task Force Advisory Board, the Housing Trust Fund Advisory Board. And then kind of in this since I've been here, but probably longer, these other groups have also been kind of a part of the outreach and have provided a lot of comment on these documents, specifically the advisory board, and then like has been mentioned, also the task force. So several considerations as we go through the rest of these slides. The city does not currently have the capacity to do underwriting reviews, which have been specifically asked for by our advisory board. We also do not have the capacity to originate the loans, so the loan underwriting. So that will be something we're currently in discussion with NeighborWorks Montana, and this is something they do all day, every day. They've given us a bid just for the underwriting reviews, and they're working on the originating and servicing aspect of that as well right now. And then there is the question of how much funding to release in the first round and then subsequent rounds as well. In the resolution, it states that the city manager may establish a reserve fund to preserve the ability of the trust fund to take maximum advantage of unforeseen opportunities in assisting housing and to ensure against unforeseen expenses. The amount to be maintained in this reserve fund will be determined by the Helena City Commission with recommendation by the city manager. And so we've talked just a little bit about that at our advisory board meetings and then internally in the community development department. And kind of come up with this figure of 100,000 to be kept in reserve is what we're recommending at any given time. So just a little bit on the financial impact of this fund. There's going to be minimum interest rate is set at 1%. So feasibly that could be higher for some projects, but growth of the fund will be slow. So we're probably in the near future here going to be looking at ways to build the base of that fund and looking for other revenue streams. I'm sure you probably all know, but I did not when I first came to this job, that $2 million in terms of housing does not cover the need. So I thought, like we'll get this money out the door and we'll have all these projects done. And I mean, my job will pretty much be complete, but turned out that was not the case. So a nonprofit that tracks housing trust fund data did release so a little bit of a dated study, but a 2016 study that found an average of $6 were leveraged in a community for every $1 of trust fund investment. And so while that $2 million might not cover all of the need, it's certainly not it's certainly going to leverage a lot more than that in this community. So these items are all directly from the establishing resolution. And this fund is to support and expand the supply of housing for lower income, senior citizens, persons with disabilities, homeless, and others with special needs. The sources of the funding, which right now sit at approximately 2.1 million, are proceeds from the sale of certain city properties, $100,000 set aside annually from the general budget. And then in the future, we'll be able to start relying on principal and interest payments from the loans. So this fund is specifically for low to moderate income beneficiaries within Helena city limits. There is a match requirement of 5 to 1. So for every $1 of trust fund money dedicated to a project, there should be $5 from that applicant. And then shelter or temporary housing projects can negotiate that down to 3 to 1 with sufficient justification and rationale. And then just a little bit, it's kind of separate from this conversation, but it is included in the resolution, is that 10% of TIF funds in each district are set aside for affordable housing projects. I have some figures that Director Danielson gave me earlier today, but that money is actually not a part of that 2.1 million. It's separate, but could be leveraged within the confines of each of those districts. All right, and we'll get into our program guidelines here. So I won't read each of these for you, but these are the priorities that we came up with to guide use of these funds. And essentially, we want to prioritize projects that maximize the use of other funding sources, do not duplicate existing services, and will have a long-term impact in the community. And these priorities were developed with the dual intent of maximizing and protecting the city's investments in housing. So eligible applicants to this fund are really any nonprofit, for-profit, or public organization who will own, develop, or sponsor eligible activities. And this question has actually come up quite a bit, but individuals are not allowed to apply to this fund. So that's essentially the only restriction on who can apply. And as far as activities go, it's anything that will add, improve, or support permanent, transitional, or temporary housing. So activities could cover construction, rehabilitation, acquisition, or financing of affordable housing projects or programs. Again, I won't read each of these out for you, but these are directly from the resolution verbatim, and these items are intended to cover all aspects of creating or supporting affordable housing from acquisition to construction, including an 8% cap on administrative expenses. I know I already kind of went over this a little bit, but the term low to moderate income is actually a little bit of a gray area, and depending on what fund you're looking at, you might see this as 60% is low income, or 100 up to 120% might be considered moderate income. And so how we chose to define that for the purpose of this fund is kind of in line with other programs that we have here. And so the low income fee waiver, building fee waiver program is set at 60% or less area median income. Our home renewal program is set at 80% or less area median income and considered to be serve moderate income households. So how we chose to take this on is to say that applicants must serve within 80% area median income, but with the advisory board recommendation and approval by the city commission, that could go up to 120% of the area median income. So just a little bit more about that match requirement. Match is essentially any dollar not considered a trust fund dollar. And the shelters and temporary housing are able to request down to that 3 to 1, just because they have a little bit less cash flow when a project's actually going. So they're not going to be relying on rents or the sales of homes to be paying their loan payments. So that we do have a building standards and accessibility section included in our draft guidelines. And all construction and rehabilitation work must conform with current building codes and zoning ordinances. It also must comply with the Fair Housing Act. And then any new construction and any rehabilitation projects to replace or expose interior walls and doors must incorporate visitability standards, which are essentially standards intended to make housing accessible to everyone. And so that would be, these aren't by any means all of those items, but wider doorways, outlets mounted not less than 18 inches above floor covering, and reinforced walls in certain areas for later installation of grab bars. Here's just a couple of them. So any project that has an investment of these dollars will need to ensure the continued affordability through the use of a deed restriction, land use agreement or covenant, And the period of affordability will be determined by the amount of funds or the type of project that is being conducted. So you can see there, it starts out at, if it's a $30,000 acquisition or rehabilitation, that's a 20-year period of affordability, all the way up to kind of the top end of what we're able to put out for a project, and that would be a 35-year period of affordability. And new construction, regardless of the amount invested, will always be 35 years. So it's broken down a little bit by project type. By no means does this cover every conceivable project, but we did put a little bit more guidelines around ones that we know are going to be applying and ones that are just a lot more complex in nature. And so rental, temporary, and transitional housing will be guided by rent limits established by their primary funding source. In the absence of that, we'll be relying on Montana low-income housing tax credit or home program rent limits. As far as the financing structure goes, permanent loans can be up to $400,000 with at least a 1% interest rate. And non-permanent housing can qualify for partial loan forgiveness of those loans. Construction loans can be up to $1 million with that same at least 1% interest rate. And non-permanent housing can also qualify for partial loan forgiveness on those loans. And for any mixed use or mixed income development, we ask that at least 50% of housing units must house low to moderate income households. So for single family dwelling unit developments, there's also cost limits associated with that are set by Montana Housing. So currently in Lewis and Clark County, that number would be at $349,525. Similar to the rental, temporary, and transitional housing, in any mixed use or mixed income development, it'd be that 50% minimum of housing units must house low to moderate income households. And this is where there's a little bit of some variability. And so there's really no option in here other than a loan, with the exception of this land trust development. And so if a project is going to be converted to a land trust, which would essentially ensure that affordability in perpetuity, we're actually offering the potential of a grant for that project. So that'd be kind of one way that we're hoping to incentivize that long-term affordability. So there's also the potential that someone could apply to this fund for a home buyer assistance program or other consumer housing program. The applicant must submit a proposal that details the operation of the program, as well as the processes used to determine beneficiary eligibility, compliance with our trust fund requirements, how the applicant will manage and repay the trust fund funds, and any documented match. And as far as the application and administrative procedures go, applications will be considered twice a year. So one cycle in the fall and then one cycle in the spring. We're suggesting a non-refundable fee of $200. And we're planning to use shared OneDrive folders for each applicant. And so the first kind of level of review will be by city staff. And so we'll just be reviewing for eligibility and completeness. And then applicants will have a chance to present their projects to city staff and the advisory board. And then the advisory board will make recommendations to the city commission, and ultimately city commission makes final award and funding decisions. So just a little bit more about the advisory board. 7 members representing real estate, finance, architecture, or engineering, lived experience of housing insecurity, and nonprofit housing providers. Members will serve a 3-year term on a volunteer basis and cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms. The advisory board will finalize program documents, review applications, and make recommendations. Periodically, they'll also be asked to review program documents and just to address any changing needs. So once an applicant has been selected for funding, there will be some kind of ongoing requirements. So those written agreements that we discussed earlier, the actual loan agreement with the terms and conditions of their loan, and then some ongoing compliance, record keeping and reporting. And so the applicant must maintain records and complete annual reports to the city throughout the entire period of affordability. More frequent and detailed reporting will be required during the construction phase of a project. We do understand that a lot of these applicants will be relying on other sources of funding that will have pretty stringent reporting requirements. And we do have that built into our guidelines that we're happy to accept those. And, we'll try to ask for minimal other things from the applicants. So I might repeat myself just a little bit here. This is information from the application. And then just to kind of preface this slide, it's a proposed timeline for our first application round. So hoping to come back at the September 26th meeting to possibly adopt these documents. If that happens, then we're looking at opening this round of funding and putting information out that first week of October with an application due date of November 17th. December 14th would be the advisory board meeting that follows that application deadline. And then as we don't have commission meetings for 2023 yet, we're kind of phrasing it as the advisory board will make recommendations to the city commission at the first administrative meeting, and at the first commission meeting after that, that's when funding decisions would happen. So the application opens with kind of the goals for that specific funding round. So that's a place where we get to reiterate the purpose of the fund. We get to say what that reserve is. And then when the application round is announced, this section will include the total amount of funding available for projects. I think in the future, if we find there's a very specific need or something that we might prioritize above other items, this would be a great section to include that in as well. So as far as the application contents go, there's going to be a project description, applicant information, including resumes and descriptions of qualifications and relevant experience, project financials, including descriptions of any assumptions used, evidence of sufficient market demand for the project for the program, an implementation schedule, a relocation plan. And I should say, I forgot to mention this earlier, but we won't be funding any projects that involve any kind of permanent relocation of people. So that's off the board, but we understand that there will probably be some temporary relocation in the event of a rehabilitation project. And then any narrative or third-party reports addressing environmental concerns. So I think we already talked about this, already covered this information, but city staff will review, and then the advisory board will go through their own evaluation process. And I think I included what we have is our draft evaluation guide that they'll be using in your packet. And that'll help them evaluate projects, rank them, and then consolidate their recommendations for the commission. And so there's been a lot of support for this fund. I've kind of said it's been spent already like 10 times over probably as far as projects that I've heard about, but just had a lot of positive feedback, and more than anything, I think people are just really excited to see this hit the ground. So I think that is my last slide. I keep going backwards, but so that's all I have, and yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, and thanks for all your work. I know that this has been a really big lift particularly for you, so thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from the commission?
Pro Tem.
Yes, Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how happy I am to be documents and having this discussion. This is it's a big moment for us. So I'm grateful to everyone from city staff and partners in the community and public who commented. This is fantastic. And I am looking forward to hearing from the experts in our community on this, but it appears as though it's a well grounded process that did get a lot of input as it was going forward. So again, I just want to say thank you, and I'm really happy to be having this discussion today.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. So just briefly, I just have a question. So there's a question of if we allocate a certain amount per application cycle, is that accurate?
Yep, correct.
Would you recommend that we do pick a certain dollar amount or just wait and see what we get and then go from there?
Sure. Yeah, and we've kind of thrown around a few different ideas, and one of them is to keep aside a percentage of the fund. And another, I think other communities have gone more along the route of saying either this much per type of project, or Missoula recently did a kind of a practice round almost, and so they released, it was $300,000, and then to see how that went. And then but just based on discussions that we've had in the department and then on the advisory board, we don't think that there's going to be so many applications this first round that the fund will be completely gone. So we definitely want there to be money in the future for projects, but want that money to be, I mean, the best use of it is to be spent on housing now. But yeah, so I guess that's not a great answer, but
that's helpful, because that's one of the things I think when I was reading your materials before I was struggling with is, we obviously don't want money just sitting around, but we also don't want to be in a position where we have spent all the funds and don't have anything enough available for a really awesome project with huge impact to be funded. My other question, do we know, and this maybe is a question for Amanda too, obviously this is a huge issue, not just for the state, but nationally too, and movement of grant making to push local governments into being more involved in this type of thing. Is there opportunity that we could pursue additional funds as revenue for this fund moving forward, or is that even available right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a good answer for you. Definitely would be worth talking to Amanda more. And I'm not really aware of any funds. And again, I haven't done the research that would be required, but I'm not currently aware of any funds that could be funneled into this.
To the trust.
Yeah.
I think part of what I think becomes the city's role is our ability to build partnerships with federal programs, the home program, CDBG, the housing organization up at the state, nonprofits, housing development organizations, and try to leverage as much other program dollars as we can. And what did you say, Kara, 1 to 6? And if you take $1 and leverage 6, that's a huge benefit to the city of Helena. And we'll just have to, but I don't, Commissioner, know of any programs out there that help fund a trust fund, but more project specific.
Great. All right, any commission?
Go ahead. No, and after you.
Commissioner Sherliff.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you very much for the presentation. Like you said before, at the top of the discussion, housing is a very critical issue that our community is facing. I like the discussion of trying to find ways to keep the fund solvent, keep it growing. I have a question about, is there a timeline for repayment of that 1% or of the loan at 1% interest? What does the timeline look like for repayment?
Sure. Yeah, and I didn't include that in the presentation, but we do have some different figures on that. Let me just dig around in my papers. I should say too that, I mean, while we have this outlined, applicants are also welcome to propose different terms than what we have in here, as long as that they can justify why they're proposing that. And so let me see here. For the rental, temporary and transitional housing loans, for the permanent loans, the term is 18 years. For a construction loan, that's 3 years. And then similar for single family loans, it's about 2 years.
One follow-up question. It's okay, Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. In terms of, do you have a recommendation for the annual investment from the budget annually from us? Is there a request or a recommendation that you would say we need to invest this much into the Housing Trust Fund every year? Or does that fluctuate?
Oh, sure. Can I just ask for a number right now? Is that the
Yeah,
talking about?
wish list, I guess, so no.
Yeah, no, I think this last couple of years, I would say that number would probably be much higher than probably any other time in the last, long time. So yeah, I don't know. I could do some research and try to figure out maybe what would be an appropriate number to ask for. Do you have any recommendations?
I would just say that that's in the context of the budget, the commission can consider that on an annual basis because there's no revenue stream to lock away.
And
So it'd be a prioritized discussion with the commission.
I would just give the context, the resolution that we passed does include $100,000 annual appropriation to be included in the budget. Now, a budget could be amended, but that's what's in the resolution. But I mean, this also was only established 2 years ago and we have $2.1 million in there. So it's not like we've just been sitting on our laurels, not funding it and clearly ready to go. And one thing I would just add for anyone in the public, in regards to Commissioner Shirtliff's question on page 7 of the really excellent guidelines is all of the loan terms for those that are interested. Commissioner Logan?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So, Kara, thank you for the presentation. Very helpful, and I did it in the resolution in section 4, and I think you touched on this a bit. It talks about one of the ways to fund, and one of the revenues would be at least 10% of the annual tax increment funds generated in your days. What kind of figure are we talking about there?
Yeah, I can actually give you numbers for each of those. So in our railroad district, we currently have, and this is just the 10% set aside, that would be $69,978. The downtown fund has $35,213, and then Capitol Hill has $15,266.
Thank you. And that's on an annual basis.
And hopefully growing.
So that would be from the beginning of the fund, or the beginning of the fund.
Then one totally unrelated question, if I may, relative to guidance for the applicants. Is there anything, I couldn't find it, but is there, I'm assuming there probably is, but is there anything that sort of prevents or restricts an applicant from being a member of the advisory board?
So we do touch on that a little bit. There's an advisory board section in the guidelines, and we actually, one of our members right now is Michael O'Neill from the Helena Housing Authority, and we imagine at some point he's probably going to want to apply to this fund for some kind of project, and we would just ask them to remove themselves from that discussion.
Seemed like it might be an important thing to clearly articulate in guidance documents. So, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Kara.
All right, Commissioner Reed has her hand up and please go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a quick question for the benefit of those watching. Would it be possible to get a reminder of what made up the 2.1 million that's in the trust fund? I know there was an initial amount and 100,000 annual, and I believe it was sale of property, but I don't know if Director Danielson has that information available, but how did we get to 2.1? Thank you.
Dr. Danielson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioner Reed. The 2.1 was largely funded by CARES Act savings that the general fund realized from CARES Act. And then there have been some smaller distributions of, 100,000, 125,000. And then this year will be another 100,000 coming from the general fund to make up that 2.1. There's a small amount of interest investment income. First, last year treasury rates were pretty low, so not a whole lot of investment income, but there was some, and we're expecting treasury rates to go up this year. So hopefully 35,000-40,000 of income interest income as well.
Good. Thanks, Dr. Danielson.
Thank you.
Okay, any public comment on this item?
Commissioners, I have no public comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I would just add
You introduce yourself too.
one small thing. My name's John Roush. I sit on this advisory panel, and it's been an honor and a real treat to be part of the process. I've learned a lot more than I've contributed, but it's been great. It's been great to be there. I'm very, very excited to turn this paperwork loose and start getting some applications and really actually getting our hands dirty with this. It's gonna be fun.
Well, we're very appreciative to you for your work and the entire advisory board and specifically Ms. Snyder, because this has been something that has been a ton of work and we're very well aware of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any general public comment on any item not discussed today? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.